there's no, there's no one formula that's going to fit everybody. Everybody's at different stages, but there is one activity that you can do that will set you apart from everybody. And I don't want to sit here and get all religious on you and all, but do unto others as you would have them do unto you is still the golden rule. There has never been a greater thing that has ever been promulgated. Yeah, I'm a more than saying something or doing something. I would like for people to understand exactly why I am focused, why I consider myself an errant, and why you should too. It's because I believe we live in a controlled construct, and the collective are following routine protocols that have been carried out multiple times. It's just different background, which we call history, historical sequences. But there are always exceptions to the rule. So those exceptions to the rule, they don't fit in, they don't mind, they don't go with the flow. These are free thinkers. These are individuals who are they're a malfunction from the perspective of a control system that seeks that everybody obeys. An errant is somebody who is a problem. That's what it comes from. Errant comes from error. You're an error. Just like the old computer models, the old dot matrix computers. When there was a problem, what would you get on the screen in green dot matrix? Error, error, error. Same thing. Even today, looking up a DNS address on the internet, if it's not there, it doesn't exist, or you can't get to it, it says 404 error. Same thing. That's who you are. Because this world is not, well, we're passing through this world. This world doesn't belong to us. We're not here to change it. We're not here to do anything. When it collapses, it will reboot and it will run a whole new series of simulations that those who weren't ready to leave this one will stay behind and relive. And they'll have suspicions and they'll suffer deja vu and they'll go through coincidences and they'll excuse me, they'll experience Mandela effect and they'll theorize all the things that we are theorizing now. And a group of them will rise up and realize that they too are errants. And they're going to go through all this and then they're going to make their exodus, while those who don't are going to remain, get rebooted, reset. They're going to run through the program all over again. There is no heaven and there is no hell. There is an origin that we came from and there's a destination that we'll return to. But that's what I want people to realize, that this isn't a hopeless situation. An all-seeing oversoul would never create a situation by which the actual individualized spirits would suffer some eternal torment because they made bad decisions. The very fact that they were given two or more choices basically means there could be no condemnation in the choosing. So this is the whole story of the prodigal son. The prodigal son was not punished when he finally returned. Everything bad that happened in his life, when he squandered his father's money, when he lost all his possessions, when he was robbed, when he made every bad decision, he finally made his way back home. And when he made his way back home, he wasn't punished. He was rewarded. They had a feast. And it's the story of the prodigal son, is the story of the errant. You've gone out in the world. You've done the things you've done. You have done the things that the rest of the world considers to be, pretty colorful. Like me, I'm an ex-con. I have a very colorful history. And so do a lot of you. And the mavericks, the free thinkers, the people who just go against the grain. These are the ones that the world can't stand. This construct that we live in tries to eject us. First, it cannot eject us from the program because we're here, but it can eject us from the control systems and the collectives so we don't become a virus and infect those others and pull them from the mire. So this is all I want people to realize, is know who you are. Because if you have any problem with anything that I just said to you right now, then that for me completely identifies who you are in the construct. And I'm cool that you're comfortable being that person. I'm not going to try and change you. But I know this, there are many people that resonate with what I'm saying, because you don't belong here and you feel it. And you're not going to be controlled, and you're not going to let this collective apparatus govern the very thoughts and actions that you do. And this makes you an errant. It makes you a problem, an error. And that's a good thing, because everything in this world is the exact opposite of what it should be. So that's all I want people to know. It's not a cult. The only cult that Archaix is attached to is the growing number of haters that are bringing all these people to my channel, quality people who come in here that find something completely different than what they were led to believe. And I'm cool with that too, because it's growing my channel. Hell, I met a new sub just yesterday in the parking lot of Hobby Lobby. Shocked me. She just walked up to me and said my name out loud, and then she left comments right here on the channel that it was her that had seen me. I can't remember her name, Barefoot something, but she's in the comment section. And yeah, it's just, you know, more and more the information is getting out that, hey, that this information is available. You know, Archaix has been organically grown, very, very slow, almost 300 videos before I even had 3,000 subs. But now it's growing exponentially, and I'm cool with that. But it needs to continue to grow organically and no artificial boost. I'm not trying to reach up there and talk to a bunch of guys that got millions of subs and all that. It's not me. I'm not even interested in that. So what you need to know about errants is that it's basically identifying yourself as separate from the collective. You're not a part of hive mentality. That's all it is. Oh, listen, there is nothing in this reality that your informed field can come into contact with, and that's your personality. That's all the information that you carry with you. There is nothing in this world that can have any power unless you invest that power in it. If you believe, that's the power of ritual. If you believe a certain series of ritualistic words or behaviors or pantomimes actually carry or invoke some type of power, then it becomes psychosomatic. It's a projection that you're making, and the neutral field of the simulacrum will build for you what you're expecting to do. This is the origin of spells and witchcraft. This is the origin of sorcery. This is the origin of magecraft. It is the origin of sympathetic magic. It's what distinguishes between the charlatan who does tarot cards and astrology readings and the genuine enlightened individual who uses tarot and uses astrology to tap into the field to provide people deeper information. Yeah, you're focused on something external, and that's the problem. There's nothing external that would carry any information that would go beyond what your own informed field would invest in it. That's all you have to do is imagine something. If you believe a certain word carries power, I promise you that word is going to carry power. But you can't transpose that on another individual because their informed field may not feel that way. Yeah, we live in an observer-dependent universe, and this means you're making the rules as you go along, and the simulacrum is going to make sure that you suffer the consequences of any rules that you break. That also is the danger of witchcraft. I think you're marrying two different things together here. You're asking me, why do the Masons revere the Phoenix, and you're compounding that with when the Phoenix was designed to keep them in check. Well, now what you're bridging here is a belief that you have that the Masons are evil, they're architects of this world, and they're the ones they're our enemies or something like that. I don't know if they are or not. I do know that Masonic institutions were the ones that put together most of the books, translating them into French, German, and English from the older Latin text. Most of the men that were learned back then were all in Masonic institutions, Rosicrucians, Elks, Moose Lodge, stuff like that. But I don't know that the Phoenix is targeting Masons. I just don't know that. That they revere it. You know what? The Phoenix has been revered for a very long time. I have videos where I show ink blots and woodcuts from the medieval ages to the Renaissance that shows the Phoenix hidden in many pictures. And it's always there as like a reminder that our world is just a reset world from a prior civilization that was basically destroyed. Yeah, I don't know. I just know that Nostradamus mentions the Phoenix. I know the Masons have it as their symbol for the 33rd degree. I know the image has basically come to identify a world that has burned and a new world that rises out of the ashes. So I don't know how to answer that question really. It's I don't know why they would revere it. I don't know that they do. I don't know if they fear it or if they see it as a symbol of reverence. I really don't know. Or if they just respect it. Out of place artifacts. In Michael Cremo and Richard Thompson in Forbidden Archaeology, they itemized 2 of them. They have a lot of OO parts that are in their book, but there's 2 of them that always stuck out to me. And one of them was the Nampa figurine in Idaho. I always thought it was my first contact with what I now know to be true is that a civilization in North America was, buried under 70 to 200 foot of earth. 70 feet to 2 miles of earth. And I know it's very difficult to believe, but there's so much archaeology now that confirms it. I somewhere on the YouTube, on the Facebook, I have a whole post on Facebook in the Archaix group about what we know, what was discovered in the mine shafts 2 miles below the surface of Heavener, Oklahoma. And what they found was a paved street and brick walls and all that. It's not supposed to be 2 miles below the earth. The Nampa figurine was pulled out from a very deep well. They pulled it up, and it's a little stone figurine that no doubt was carved by humans. In the 1880s, 1890s, and early, all the way up to about 1930, coal seams all over North America were yielding human artifacts, gold jewelry, bracelets, little bells, ornate material. OO parts have been found everywhere, but to answer your question, the 2 that really were profound was the Nampa figurine that was found super deep, and the metallic spheres that have been found in Africa. That have this 3 little rings that they orbit all the way around these metallic spheres, and these metallic spheres are very unusual. To me, they look like the bullets for a type of large caliber weapon. But I don't know. I'm just theorizing. But the alloys and the unidentified materials makes it all the more enigmatic because they're not natural. Some technologically advanced civilization in the ancient past left those metallic spheres. We just don't know what they were for. Found very deep underground. So those OO parts are very interesting to me. And so are the discs, the little jade discs they found in tungsten discs that they found in China with ancient script on them. We don't know what those were for. The mica sheets that were found below the Incan temples, we know they have something to do with piezoelectric transference of energy. But we just don't really understand how those temples worked and why they needed all that gold and mica in the room, in those temple rooms together. There's all kinds of unusual. The crystal skull's unusual. It was found in Central America. So OO parts are everywhere. Jonathan Gray, beforeus.com. Yeah, you can spend all day on his website going through out-of-place artifacts. My experience with the Black Sun image is purely of alchemical origin, and it was like a memory of the nemesis, the reality of the nemesis star. It's in the old Hermetic literature, the pre-alchemical literature. There was a belief that we had a day star, a sun, the one we see every day, but always on the night side there was a hidden black sun that we could not see. Some theorized it was occupied, that it was the origin of demonic entities and all that, but the black sun that's seen in later medieval and Renaissance alchemical treatises, that black sun is I don't know if it's a memory of the phoenix or if it's a recognition of the phoenix, or it very well could be the admission by these men who put these treatises together of an unseen object in the sky. Because remember, I believe Phoenix is always there. I don't believe anymore that it leaves our solar system. I don't believe these are the things that my paradigm at the time had caused me to believe, because I was trained to believe we lived in a solar system. When I divorced myself from that belief system, then things began to make sense. And yeah, the Phoenix has always been in the sky. It's cloaked. It only manifests and shows itself every 138 years. So the black sun of the alchemical treatises could very well be the phoenix, or the idea of the phoenix. I don't know, because those same treatises always have a phoenix hidden in the picture somewhere. Listen, the only writings that have ever been found inside the Great Pyramid of Egypt was found in 1837 in Davidson's chamber, the relieving chambers above the king's chamber. Now, you have to understand, in 1837, there was a problem. Colonel Howard Weiss was losing funding because he hadn't found anything of value the whole time his expedition was surveying the Great Pyramid in Egypt. He was trying to bridge something that could have never been bridged. And I discussed this with a Grammarica podcast last night. I don't know much about these guys. I don't know when they're going to they're a podcast. They're not on YouTube. I don't know when they're going to post that, but we went in deep about Graham Hancock and the Great Pyramid. And I was explaining to those guys last night. I says, listen, the cartouche of Khufu was done incorrectly by Howard Weiss, and Egyptologists tried to cover this up and tried to explain that, with different time periods, they wrote it in different ways and all that. But what really exposes the whole thing is he was losing funding. And then after Graham Hancock had released a telegraph, and he said, hey man, I found this major deal. I found proof that Herodotus is right, that the Great Pyramid is truly Egyptian, and that Pharaoh Khufu of the 5th dynasty is the builder. And this right here immediately got his funding back, but Humphreys Brewer was there. Humphreys Brewer knew they took the same pigments that were used from the people that were still living on the Nile River. The pigment had never changed. They used those same pigments thousands of years later, and they put the cartouche up there, and they put those writings in Davidson's relieving chamber, and then left it there for somebody else to find. So the person that actually wrote it wasn't also the person that discovered it. So it was all a scam, and it worked, and scientific world backed him, and he got his funding, and the scientific world literally silenced Humphreys Brewer. Nobody wanted to hear him and his conspiracy theory of how all that was made up. Nothing's ever been found inside the Great Pyramid to show an Egyptian origin, which isn't unusual, because northern Egypt is packed full of pyramids, but there are no pyramids in southern Egypt where Thebes is, Waset, Karnak, Abydos. Yeah, the Egyptian cities that you see on National Geographic, the Egyptian massive Egyptian temples and all that you see is in southern Egypt. That's where the pharaohs were, but Egypt has always been two Egypts. One was metropolitan, multiple different races. One was strictly African Egypt, and it was in the south. And there's 450 miles between them. This is what they don't tell you in the Egyptian history books. Anybody can look on a map and see. I got several videos that show maps and charts of just the vast differences. Yeah, the pharaohs were not buried in pyramids. There's never been any evidence of that. As a matter of fact, in southern Egypt, all the pharaohs were buried in the Valley of the Kings. That's what it was for. So, yeah, there's nothing that had been found. And they're not going to, because the Great Pyramid Complex in Giza was built in the 29th century BC. And we have absolutely no evidence of any type of writing at that time. Nobody was writing. There were no cuneiform texts. There's no Sumerian, Akkadian, Elamite, Rashamra, Ugaritic, Hattusan, Hittite. There are no Amorite, Mitannian, no Canaanite, Phoenician. There are no written records that survive from that period. And the reason is there were no written records at that time. The civilization that built Giza was very advanced. They didn't need to write things on clay tablets. They wrote things probably holographically. They had technology that we don't know today, or it's very similar to what we have. Because if an X-flare activity, an EMP sufficient enough to completely kill all electronics in the world, if it was to happen tomorrow, did you know that 3 weeks from now we'll start very, very quickly returning to the Neolithic? With our total 100% infrastructure collapse, we're not manufacturing anything to write on anymore. No more paper, none of that. Within 60 years, people will be just spearing their animals to eat, because there will be no more bullets. There's no more bullet manufacturing. There's no more engineering. There's no more. Everything is gone. This is what happened in the ancient world. Before the cataclysm, they were very advanced, so they didn't have to record things on clay tablets and cuneiform. But after the cataclysm, the day the sky fell, when that happened, then all of a sudden they had to use clay and use a stylus, and they had started recording information on clay tablets. And it all happened uniformly, almost at the same time in multiple different places. So what we have is a technologically advanced people who have lost 100% of their infrastructure, but they still have their intellect intact. The survivors are still smart, so they built a new world. And as they were building the new world among other survivors, those survivors regarded them as gods. They were just normal humans that had much more information, the ability to put together a new infrastructure. But within 200 years, it wasn't a technologically advanced infrastructure. It was a caste system where the ruling parties had created systems by which they could continue to rule even though they were outnumbered 1,000 to 1. But yeah, that's it, right? That's it. All about Great Pyramid. I could do hours and hours and hours of videos on the Great Pyramid and that. But yeah, there's never been any schematics ever been found on how they built those structures, because I believe they were built using computer technology. Every bit of it was mapped out. Every measurement was mapped out. It was all done three-dimensionally, just like we do architecture today. And it wasn't a whole bunch of slaves wearing rags around their loins in sandals in the hot sun doing it. No, it was during a vapor canopy under totally different conditions, and the entire pyramid was built very quickly and using machines. Somebody made a very interesting comment. It stuck in my mind. Guys, I read my comment sections. I do not have the tenacity to answer every comment, but I do read my comment sections. I read what you guys say on a daily basis. And somebody made a very interesting comment that under the dark purple time, the dark purple light time of spider grandmother time, which we know of as the antediluvian world, the pre-flood world, during that time, the white Caucasian skin would have a bluish tint. And this may be the origin of all these old Vedic, old Hindu reliefs and paintings and all that stuff that show that the rulers back then, the gods, the Arjuna's people and all that, had this blue skin that separated them from others. But other than that, they looked absolutely human like everyone else. So I don't know. It's a theory, but blue people have never been found. I mean, we've never excavated them. I don't see them on monuments anywhere. Other outside the Vedic Hindu context, but Asian. But it's very interesting though that yes, under the violet light of the vapor canopy, people would have looked very different than they look today. So I don't know. That's a good question. There's not a lot to be known about the Dacians. That's what happens when you have, about 2 million people, a civilization of 2 million people that are they're advanced enough to keep all their enemies at bay, and yet they're isolated enough away from everybody there's not a lot of it doesn't seem to be that they did any type of trade with anyone. They were very reclusive. But the problem is around 460, around the return of the Nemesis X object, around that time the Dacians vanished. And I have read history books where different theories are put forth, but none of them are satisfactory. But the entire population just vanished. Now, I'm not saying that the Phoenix took them, and I'm not saying that Nemesis X took them. I don't know. There are many lacunas in history that we cannot fill, and we just can't fill because there is no text that has survived, or the agents of the papacy have already removed those from the public domain, and we no longer have access to those materials. Because remember, we're not, as historical investigators, we're not just putting together the pieces of the past. It's more than that. We're not only analyzing all these ancient texts and removing about 90% of the dross to find 10% gold in correspondences between these ancient texts. That's one thing we do. But the other thing we do is we're in a constant battle against the censorship of the papacy, because for over 1,000 years, the papacy has been trying to find all these old texts and books before they hit mainstream and multiple copies are made and people recognize that they exist. like the Orlind manuscript and the Book of Jasher, which another copy was found in Gonza of Persia. So it silenced the academics that were claiming that it was a forgery. Then there was of course, the Colburn Bible, and the sole surviving copy of Beowulf. The church wanted to get rid of that book forever. Yeah, there's a long list of all the different books that the papacy has really denigrated and even used the academia to promote doubt, to get people to disbelieve the writings and the stories, because they go against the official narratives. And the official narrative, of course, is the Old Testament that is pushed forth by the papacy. You would do well to read a very old text called the Mayan Popol Vuh, because Western scholars were quick to dismiss things like Hesiod, who describes the origin and birth of different races, and Ovid, and now the Sumerian text, where the Sumerians regard themselves as the black-headed people, and they show themselves in statuary and all that as beardless. They can't grow beards, and they got smooth skin. They're not a hairy people, and they have dark hair, dark eyes. But they describe the Anuna totally different, as the shining ones, very, very tall with thick beards, and they show them as they show them also in their iconography, in their reliefs. So it's an admission from a smooth-skinned people that the Anuna were bearded and much bigger. Now, it was later Babylonians that took that out of context and started saying that the Anuna were Anunnaki and they were gods. But this is not what we get at the first. We get two different races coming into contact with each other, and one highly influencing the other. But the Babylonian priesthood turned that all around and demonized the Anuna, turned them into the Anunnaki, turned them into gods, created a fear-mongering religious center that basically gave birth to all kinds of religions that was exported out of the Near East all over the world. So, AKA the burning bush. So, yeah, I don't know. Do you think they put... I would read the Mayan Popol Vuh because it goes into some details about how the gods started a human race, and then they decided that it wasn't what they were looking for, and then they started another one, and then a cataclysm or some type of reset happened, and they started another one. And the Mayan Popol Vuh goes into some detail about how the gods used different materials to create each stage. And yeah, it's a sensitive topic. Anything involving race is a sensitive topic. People get offended and all, but what's really interesting, that I show in my Anuna Files videos, several videos, is that, we have all these traditions from around the world, and they're not from white people at all, that basically tell the exact same story. You can read that in my Anuna Files, but it's the same thing that the ancient Chinese said. They called them the Dragon Kings, and that's not because they were evil, because the ancient Chinese revered the dragon as a status symbol. And then, interestingly, the Dragon Kings had a character trait that was very unknown to the ancient Chinese, but it distinguished those who were of dragon blood as opposed to those who didn't have dragon blood. And that was the ability to grow a beard. Okay. The original sayings of Jesus were what Marcion had in possession, with 13 epistles of Paul. Later on, the career of Apollonius of Tyana, who was a miracle worker, who was a sage, the elements of his life, Apollonius of Tyana, were added to the non-miraculous elements of the sayings of Jesus text that was in the possession of Marcion, the navigator. 100 years later, this amalgamation, this merging of the spiritual sayings of Jesus and the hyperbole of the Apollonius of Tyana miracles, these were merged together in early Christianity by the Roman Church. Then, to add insult to injury, somebody, we don't know who, but somebody took the sayings of Jesus text and wrote Matthew, Mark, and Luke. They did not write John. But the sayings of Jesus text was the template by which Matthew, Mark, and Luke were written. Matthew, Mark, and Luke are very, very similar in many things, but it includes all these miracles and all these things that were not in the original Marcion document. Somebody wrote John, but John is written from the perspective of the Gnosis. The first 300 years of Christianity is where all the manipulation took place. It was already set in stone of what the New Testament gospel was going to be like by the year of Constantine's Council of Nicaea in 325 AD. But yes, Apollonius of Tyana is definitely a part of the story of Jesus. Those who are still here in 2178, when the reboot happens and the simulacrum collapses, they're rebooted. They're right back into the system. They're not going to go to hell. They're not going to suffer eternally. No, they're like an unproved metal. They still have dross. They're still mixed with dross. They're still iron mixed with miry clay. They've got to go back. That's a reboot. That's what the reset. That's what Genesis is all about. Genesis is a creation story with all the clues that it's actually a reset. It's a new heavens and a new earth. It's after a great destruction. It's crazy. Here's a creation story that starts when the world is destroyed. So yeah, it's anybody here anyone still here in 2178 is going right back through Genesis all over again. It's all part of the program. This is a massive simulacrum program that many souls are traveling through right now, and many of us are ready. Many of us are ready, and you'll just have to wait for that research. But I'm telling you now, 2070 is the year that you're really looking for. But it's there's lots going to happen before then. We got 18 more years before the Phoenix phenomenon, but don't think the elite don't have some moves for us in that next 18 years. They do. It's not 2178 that you want to be here for. It's that would be sad if you were. That's the collective. And the collective, in order to reap the next in order for the harvest to reap the next collection of souls that are ready, the next group of errants, they got to run through this all over again. They signed up for it, so they got to do it. Well, first of all, the Phoenix phenomenon called Phoenix comes late in history. The older names for it were the like destroyer, the doom shape, angel of death, things like that. Being called the Phoenix came late. Now, the origin of the word, if you want to understand the etymology of the word Phoenician, it comes from the word purple. And it comes from a purple dye that was extracted from like oysters or clams or something that's native to the Mediterranean, and it's in shallow water. And the Phoenicians were famous for the purple robes, which were like robes of the royalty. Everybody wanted them in the elite circles. But it came to be termed a colloquial. This is not etymology here. Etymologically, Phoenician comes from purple and the extraction of this purple dye. Now, Phoenician came to be understood as a colloquial, which means it had another meaning to it later on. And what it was any individual who left for a long period of time and then it returned. When they returned, people are like, "Oh wow, we haven't seen you in years. Man, you're a real phoenix." And this is what they called people, because it was already assumed that you've been gone so long that you were dead. So you were a phoenix. You not only did you die, but you rose back from the ashes, and here you are standing in front of me. So yeah, it was an old term of endearment, and it was because the Phoenicians were known. They were a seafaring race, fearless. Some guys would build a ship, and they would turn around and stock it, and they would disappear and sometimes not come back for years. Sometimes they came back with merchandise and their hulls filled with things that could have only come from America. Yeah, they sailed for long journeys. Corn, maize, cottons, different types of animals that are native to North and Central America. Yes, we have accounts of Phoenicians doing that. So it's also explained. The Phoenician navigation also explains why so many Phoenician inscriptions have been found on boulders and caves all around the world. They left their signature everywhere they went. Every shore they landed on, they found somewhere to put some type of alphabetical script on there. It's essentially a clever way of asking me, do you believe the Earth is a globe or do you believe it's flat? And I can't go with neither, because I believe we live in a computer program. I believe that this is the simulacrum, and I can't wrap my head around the whole idea that we're on a spinning ball traveling thousands of miles an hour around a star 93 million miles away. And none of that makes sense to me anymore. I don't feel like I'm moving, and there's nothing in the sky that even mirrors or shows me evidence that we are moving. All movement to me is in the sky. It's not on the ground's not moving at all. So I don't know where the edge of the construct would be. I don't know, because if there was an edge of the construct and this was a flat plane, then that implies a dome. Does the sky look like a dome? Of course it does. I call it the stellosphere, but I don't know. We could be existing within some type of Dyson shell, all computerized, holographic. I don't know. My conclusions that we live in a simulation is by virtue of the hundreds of data sets that I cannot make sense of outside the context of a computerized reality. Nothing I have researched makes sense because I don't compartmentalize my output. Everything that I conclude to be true must fit in somewhere in my paradigm. I cannot practice exclusions. So by including everything that I've ever discovered, the only thing that makes sense is that reality is simulated. And in a simulated context, then two different realities can coexist without contact. Then we're talking about kaleidoscope phenomenon. And be sitting inside of a sphere, and he can see different patterns that I can't, simply because his vantage point is slightly different than mine. So we're looking at the same surface, but we're not interpreting the same data. So I don't know. I don't know anything about the contours of the world. I know people speculate Antarctica isn't actually a continent, that it's something else. I don't know. I haven't been out there. I've never researched the Admiral Beard stuff, so I really don't know anything about that. It's too modern for me to even really be interesting. And there's nothing that I could ever find from old books about that you can't already know from everything that's been posted on YouTube. So I don't know. It's just not a mystery to me. The dimensions of the world are not a mystery. The why of the world is what I'm more interested in. Yeah, I'm not into the Tartarian movement. I don't know much about it. To me, you guys talk about the Byzantium architecture and the Gothic architecture. A lot of these pictures in the Tartarian movement, it's the only stone structure in an entire city. Many times these cathedrals were the only stone and rock structure that was even built in many of these European cities. I don't know, man. It's I read Flamenco, and I read it with a calculator. I even did a video called Tartaria, the missing 1,000 years, which is a critique because there is no missing 1,000 years. But you can watch that video. There was a Tartary, and I have information on my channel about the Khans and the Tartars and the Huns, Bulgaria, the Burgundians. I don't know, but an actual I just, you know what? It's just so difficult for me to talk about because no matter what I say, there is so much baggage attached to all the different elements of Tartarian theory that you're going to think I'm saying something else. So I'm not on board. There was a country called Tartaria. Tartary, not Tartaria, but Tartary. And other than that, I don't see it as they're any more important than anybody else in the world. So I think it's a whole theory that's gotten completely way too much significance attached to it. So I need to see text. I need to see the books. I need to see the ancient historians. I need to see authors from the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, and 14th centuries that are mentioning the kings, the ruling dynasties, the population shifts, the migrations. If I can read Gibbon, man, I read every volume of Gibbon. If you guys don't know, it's massive, massive, fine print. The history and decline of the Roman Empire. Multiple volumes. Each volume's like 800 pages, microprint, and hundreds of historians are all cited. It's close to being in chronological order, but there's no Tartaria anywhere in that history, and I can't find it. So I need for people that want my opinion on Tartaria, you need to reference the historical text. There has to be there has to be king's correspondence. Museums have all kinds of old seals from different kings and queens, different monarchies, dukes, the nobilities, the baronies. There's all kinds of documents that exist from the medieval times and Renaissance times that verify the existence of like Moravian dynasty, the Habsburg dynasties. We can verify so many things from the historical record. Why can't we find any of these things verifying some Tartarian dynasties? Who were the Tartarians? Are you talking about the Tartars? Because then you're talking about a 200-year period roughly, and it was basically Huns, the people displaced by the Mongols, and yeah, you're not talking about if you're just talking a geographical designation, you're talking about southern Russia. So yeah, there's so much incongruencies in that. I'm just really, if you're coming to Archaix, if you're coming to the Archaix material looking for evidence of Tartaria, you will not find it. You're not. The very first mentioning of the order of Melchizedek, I don't know about the order, but the very first mentioning of Melchizedek is in the rabbinical chronological record that uses the Annus Mundi system called the Book of Jasher. The translation of Jasher that I like is from the Latin. It's by Albinus Alcuin from the year 800 AD. He was in the court of Charlemagne. Now, this translation of the Book of Jasher is fantastic, and a lot of academia were disbelieving that a chronological record so meticulous could actually have survived from the ancient world, and there was a lot of disbelievers. Unfortunately, there was a conspiracy in the 1800s, and a bogus Book of Jasher that makes Jasher to be a judge of Israel was published by a Bristol publisher and released to the public. This was enough to get the rest of academia to realize that this is a hoax. The Book of Jasher isn't shit. And it's a damn shame, because right after this happened, there was a real Book of Jasher, but it wasn't the one that was promoted by Bristol. So shortly after this, after academia condemned the Book of Jasher as being unbelievable, there's no way a chronological record this meticulous could have survived. Then they found one in a tomb in Gonza of Persia, but it was too late. Academia had already made up their mind. So the Book of Jasher is fantastic. And in that book, you're going to find a chronological record. It's meticulous. Everything I've told you on my channel about when the exact years of the Book of Jasher is used for a lot of these years. Stephen Jones, biblical chronologist, used the Book of Jasher and verified it with the Assyrian eponyms, biblical chronology, and using a calculator, and realized, wow, this is absolutely fantastic. How all these things were put together. The pre-flood world was 1656 years. Abraham was born in the 292nd year after the flood. Same thing Josephus and Rashi published. It's really interesting. It's really, all the chronomarkers are perfect. But in that, also the flood of Ogyges, 1687 BC, is perfectly dated. The Book of Jasher is fantastic. But in the Book of Jasher, we have the phenomenon of Shem in Canaan. He's ruling in Canaan, and people regard him as having no beginning and no end, because people have been born and died while Shem was alive, and it looked like he didn't age, because Shem was a titan. Shem was born during the vapor canopy. He survived the day the sky fell. After that, He was still alive, according to the book of Jasher, 500 years after the flood, when they called him Melchizedek, which means the king of Zedek. Shem was ruling on the throne, but it wasn't a normal regnal period. He was a priest king, and his throne was in a temple. And the people venerated him as being both a priest and a king. So they had created the line of Melchizedek, which started with Shem. This is the origin of that term, the order of Melchizedek. And the reason why the idea that Melchizedek has no beginning and no end is because he was a titan and that he had no beginning, because everybody that was alive at the time was born after the flood, after the collapse of the vapor canopy. He was born before it, so it was almost like he was timeless. And the fact that he wasn't aging and he was still alive when people were being born and grew old and died meant that he had no end as well. So that's the story. That's the origin of the Melchizedek term. In ancient times, when you saw a cairn on the side of the road, you'd see a whole bunch of boulders and small rocks all stacked up like a pyramid. It was called a Hermian heap. There's a book called Ancient Symbol Worship that you might want to check out. It was I think C. Staniland Wake or Stanip. I don't remember who's the author, but it's from the 1800s. But ancient symbol worship goes into these Hermian heaps and all that. But there were 3 Hermes in the ancient world, and the first Hermes is his whole story is mirrored in the story of Enki and Enoch. Then there's a second Hermes. The second Hermes is after the cataclysm, after the world was already old. This second Hermes came into the possession of ancient knowledges that belonged to the old world, and he was able to translate them. And he started a school, and that school was in Egypt, and he began to train all the scholars of the ancient world about what went on pre-cataclysm. This is the second Hermes. This second Hermes is remembered as Brahma. Abraham and Sarah is nothing but Brahma and Saraswati of ancient India. So this was the second Hermes. The third Hermes came much later, and he is identified as a Greek, just right before the Greeks came into power, as the pre-Greek figure. This third Hermes was a philosopher. He was a mystic. He was a savior, very unusual. He was like the Saint Germain of his day. But this is the origin in the Hermetic literature of Hermes Trismegistus, Hermes the thrice great. And basically, this information trickles down to a text that will educate you on a lot of this. That was called, what was Hermes? I can't remember the name of the damn text now. The Hermetic literature. Guy's got a crazy name, but it's the title of a book. I'll remember it later. But it was supposedly written, by Hermes Trismegistus. I can't remember the title of the book, but it's the origin of all Hermetic literature. Is these 3 different Hermes. So. And there were ancient writers that all mentioned this as well, that there were 3 different Hermes over 3 different periods of time, which means it's 3 different people that were basically fulfilling the same role. So in retrospect, they were given the title Hermes. And this is also the origin of the Shepherd of Hermas text, which was an original like Gnostic Christian text. I've mentioned that it's in the Apocrypha, Christian apocryphal writings called the Shepherd of Hermas. I'm sorry. The Secrets of the Divine Pymander. The name of the book that you need to read is called The Divine Pymander. The Divine Pymander goes into the origin and identities of the ancient Hermes. It's a fascinating study, but it is the origin of the Hermetic literature, if that's what you're really getting into. It'll give you some more information about Egypt and the Great Pyramid and how knowledge of the ancient world was dispersed all around the world. It's some pretty fascinating stuff. My book, Lost Scriptures of Giza, goes into a lot of detail from these texts. That's a really good observation, Victoria, because I don't know of a single text in history that says the capstone was gold. Now, if it is gold, you have to understand a handful of gold. You know how heavy that is? Just a handful of gold. imagine a pyramidion that is like 46 feet at every base. Its perimeter is 46 feet on one side. Then it's 31 feet tall, shaped like a pyramid. Do you have any idea how heavy it is? Do we have a machine today that could even lift that weight? Yeah, solid gold, 31 feet high, 46 at the base. That's just incredible. It's incredible. So, yeah, it's just we're talking about slightly less than 200-foot perimeter and 31 feet high. That's how big the capstone would have to be to finish out the geometry of the Great Pyramid. It's the capstones. There's never been a capstone on the pyramid ever. Remember, the chief cornerstone is the stone the builders rejected. This means no capstone has ever been in place. So, isn't it the channeled material, like the Law of One, the Emerald Tablets or something like that? Isn't it the channeled material that promotes the whole gold capstone deal? I don't really know because in the eschatology, God is represented by the stone kingdom. He's the stone the builders rejected. It's the metallic kingdoms that are of human manufacture, and they all fall. Remember, gold, silver, bronze, iron, and then iron mixed with miry clay. These are the empires of men, and they all fall to the stone that uncut by human hands that descends from the sky and shatters the kingdoms and begins the stone kingdom. 2046 North America to me is a critical impact. I don't know what it's going to impact. I don't know what it is. Something's going to fall out the sky and land in North America and make it uninhabitable. It is something that has already happened before. Archaeologists will tell you all day long that around 997 to 1000 BC, something fell out the sky and it impacted North America and created the Montana Badlands. But we also know something fell out of the sky and hit the Gulf of Mexico in ancient times and created the Chicxulub crater and deposited a layer of iridium all the way around the world. So I'm on board with something falling out of the sky. I just don't know what. But 2046 is the next great impact date. I don't subscribe to the asteroid Apophis deal. They've been talking about it since the 90s. It's early thousands. Asteroid Apophis passes by close in 2029 or something. Then all of a sudden in 2036 it comes back and hits us or something. I don't remember. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. Remember, guys, all these dates that I provide you, for those of you new to my channel, 2040 and 2046 are the key dates of the Archaix research, but this isn't nothing new. You're new to the channel, but I've been publishing books about this since 2006, articles since 2003. Never needed to change the dates because the architecture of history is fixed, and this is what Chronicon is about. I've never had to modify my theory at all. I've had to modify the way I perceive some of the data, but not the chronology. The chronology has never changed and never will. But 2040 and 2046 is what I've been saying for almost 20 years. This is a question I get quite often, and there is a hope in the human mind that the collective destiny can be thwarted. And I don't believe that. I don't believe you're here to change the world. I will take as evidence of that no one's ever done it before. The collective has never come together, and anytime they do, something happens. The apparatus of control puts the hammer down on us as soon as we try to come together to do something beneficial, like the Tower of Babel, when the gods came down and divided us. Divide and conquer is their strategy. So when we do great things, we seem to get sent into a reset pretty quick. But this goes into other phenomena as well, and this is where a lot of people have left my channel because they don't want to hear it. But it's not going to I'm never going to amend my message because people disagree with me. But all the prayers in the world, hundreds of millions of people begging God, praying, exercising their faith to cure cancer, and it hasn't worked. Instead, the pharmaceutical companies get rich treating the symptoms and totally ignoring the cures. So this hasn't happened. So what's going on here? Do we say God doesn't exist because cancer is still real? If hundreds of millions of people can pray to ask for deliverance, so the world, why hasn't the world changed? Why is the world still evil? Why are the same evil SOBs still running everything and there's nothing we can do about it? Why is this going on? So if we're going to ignore all the evidence that this world is not what we think it is, then it's easy to conclude. It's easy to fantasize and make up all these we are the world attitudes that we're going to come together and everything's going to be hunky-dory and we're going to create a new golden age by all positive thinking. But it never happens. This is all wish fulfillment. This is all things that people hope and wish for but never achieve. So I don't want to be a doomsayer here, but I am absolutely convinced that you're not here to change the world. The world will be just as evil and sorry the day you exited it as the day you entered it. And it always has been, every generation. Study Cicero, Tacitus, Tatian. You will read everything. Procopius. You will read all the conditions that we suffer in the collective today are the exact same things that populations suffered in ancient Greece and Rome, Etruria, all around Europe. Nothing has changed. Only the background. So, because I accept this to be true, it means all power lies in the individual. It doesn't lie in the collective. We're not here to change anything. But in the individual, we have great power to live whatever life we want to live and to live it abundantly and even share it. We even have the power to change the lives that are closest to us. In the simulacrum, we can create an insulated reality that has almost no contact with the outside wickedness. We can do this, but can we all come together and change the trajectory of events? No. We're in a scripted simulacrum and it's heading toward a reason. We are here to develop and to learn and to build our eternal personalities. And when we are ejected from this system, the system here will stay for those who have not sufficiently developed. It will stay and they'll be rebooted and they'll go right back through it again while we leave and we move on to other places, other experiences, other avenues of growth. So yeah, I would love to believe that we can all hold hands and stretch coast to coast from east to west, from California all the way to South Carolina. I would love to believe that, but it's never happened. It never will. This world's not going to change, and we're not going to change it in the collective. That's some Galactic Federation stuff. I mean, that's some fantasy that people really want to believe in, but they understand. I mean, it's never happened in all of world history. And all the prayers of world history have never changed the trajectory of events. Only individuals have changed their personal and the trajectories of their loved ones and family. Yeah, you have the power to do that. You have the power to create an island that is insulated from all the wickedness around you. Yeah, you can be that one house in an entire neighborhood that gets obliterated in a cataclysm that's untouched. Not one blade of grass on your property. Yeah, there are many historical incidents of tragic things happening to an entire environment and then somebody completely immune to everything. Look at 1902. The one man condemned to die, Auguste, sentenced to death, was the only one that survived when Mount Pelee exploded on the island of Martinique in the French Caribbean in May of 1902. It was a Phoenix date. Whole city was obliterated. All the ships in the port were capsized from the blast. But this guy, he wasn't trying to hear it. Not only was he condemned to die, he had already made up his mind he wasn't going to die. And everybody in the city died but him. Yeah, man. He later made the circuit with Barnum and Bailey Circus because his story was so profound. I'm not a prepper really. I've probably got 3 weeks worth of food. I got 3 weeks worth of food, probably 3 weeks worth of gas, butane if I need it. If I need my emergency heaters in case the power goes out. I got a generator. My van's been turned into a bug out van. I got heavy crossbows. I got hand crossbows. I got all my hunting gear and camping gear and all that, but I'm not training my informed field to expect anything bad. I'll be 67 years old in 2040. And I don't know. I don't know what to expect. I don't know if I'll even live that long. It's I'm just not worried about it. Not worried about it at all. So, yeah, I'm not doing anything to prepare for it. All I'm doing is telling people about it. That's it. Well, I don't know. It seems that the light body, isn't that some type of belief that once we leave here, we're going to be angelic and we're not going to have a body. We're going to be more ghost-like or whatever. I don't know. I don't know. I believe that I believe that our eternal reality is not dissimilar from what we're experiencing right now. We're going to have an avatar, and it's going to be able to feel. We're going to be able to enjoy different creations, different biospheres, different universes. It will be able to adapt and change. We are creating that avatar now by the things that we do in these life sims. This is the white robe that is given to he who overcometh. I will give him a white robe and a new name. Yeah, a new name. A new name is amazing because it means there's a carryover with the personality. That means whoever Jason is, the core fundaments of my personality right now, whether you like me or hate me, this personality that is Jason is independent of this flesh suit, of this avatar, which means there's a promise that I'm going to get a new avatar. And that new avatar is going to be with my personality in it. That makes all the difference in the world. That makes all this worth it. It makes all this life sims, all these memory wipes in between these life sims. When I receive my new avatar, I won't be restricted by this avatar, which only remembers this life sim. When I get my new avatar, memory is holographic. I will have all my memories, everything I've learned, everything accrued in prior life sims restored back to me. Not only that, but I'm given a new name, which means I'm given a new identity. And an identity does not carry any value unless it is affixed to something that has been built, which is the personality. That means whoever you are right now, you're going to have a much better body in the future that's capable of doing all kinds of things. And you don't have to worry about you becoming something else that you wouldn't recognize. Because then all the promises would be nullified. All the experiences would be nullified. What good would it be? No, you're given a new name and a new white robe. You are given a new avatar. You are given new abilities, but it's still you. It's your personality basically inhabiting an entirely new body. Is it your immortal, eternal body? I don't know. It may be the new avatar by which you start the next sim in. I don't know. Or you return back home for a while. Because I do believe there's a central hub where we return back to, where we share our experiences. We're all friends there and family. We all know each other. And then some of us go into this simulacrum, some of us go into this simulacrum. Yeah, I believe it's network. As a matter of fact, you'll see more of these beliefs of mine in my Phalorn saga. And I know some of you, I've looked at the analytics. I know some of you are really following that series. I've got my first two books, the first two entire books of the Phalorn saga already on YouTube, on my other channel. And I know a lot of people are listening to those. Yes, it's fantasy. It's like sword and sorcery. But now people understand where it's going. With the end of book 2, you see this is a far deeper story than I had conveyed. I told you guys, my belief about the world we live in has been injected into that narrative. So I have a video called Origin of Demons. And in that video, I explain that demons are just human intelligences that have lost their avatars for whatever reason. And the loss of that avatar has something to do that happened outside the construct. Listen, there's no difference between someone who dies on their deathbed at 93 years old and they finally give up the ghost and the avatar ceases to function. That disconnect, now the soul is free to move on. There's no difference between the person that is murdered, the person that is killed in cold blood. There's a disconnect. That person moves on. So the avatar dies. It's still no different than the person who dies in an accident. That person's avatar is separated from their personality. That personality moves on. There's no difference from the individual who has taken their own life. No matter how they took their own life, the avatar has lost its ability to continue. Therefore, the spirit continues on. There are no differences between suicides and murders or natural deaths. The only difference is those who have had the plug pulled on them. And that's the origin of demons. Those who are on the outside of the sim, for whatever reason, somebody has pulled whatever they've separated, whatever they did, they detached them from their power source. On the outside of the sim, I believe this is the origin of demons. A group or groups were taken out. There was a controversy. And I believe somebody on the outside of the construct pulled the plug on some people. And those people are now, this was not natural death inside the simulacrum. It wasn't natural at all. They were in an avatar. They were in an avatar, but they remained in that avatar until that avatar died. But the soul connection, the spirit connection, the personality connection to whoever you truly are on the outside of the construct was severed by somebody on the outside. And when that happened, that was unnatural. When that person's avatar died, that soul could not get recycled back in. And I believe that that's the origin of poltergeist and phantasms and ghosts, disembodied spirits, demons. They're full of rage. They can't enjoy the life sims. They can't get back into a new avatar. There's no avatars available for them. They have exited the cycle. But because they're here in the simulacrum, they can't get out until the simulacrum collapses, until the reboot. Now, I understand that's a terrifying thing to think about. But this is a series of cognitive leaps based off all the data that I've been able to go through. Nothing else makes sense because I'm a 100% believer in reincarnation. Yeah, I've read the science. I've read the books. There's no way to get around the fact that children have memories of that can be verified, that they were in certain families that were local and they remember things, but they remember it from the perspective of an elderly person right before they died. So there's no way. If I am going to hold anything as true in the particular, then I must be open to the fact that it's true in the collective as well. If any one study can show that a child was reincarnated, then I have to believe that reincarnation applies to everybody. So when I do that, I have to also understand that there are many people in the human family that have direct contact with demonic, spiritual, ghostly entities, and this is a reality for them. For some reason, they are able to interact with them more than others can. The existence of demons basically means there are intelligences just like us because they are us. They are personalities, but for whatever reason, they have been exited out of the sim cycle system and they're no longer participating and they're just stuck in the holography, free-flowing, timeless, able to do whatever. And for brief periods of time, if they can find somebody whose personality is sufficiently damaged, they can even possess an avatar for short periods of time. So until they're exorcised or until the personality just evicts them. Before these are all theoretical, but they're educated guesses based off all the information that I've had available to me. Well, first of all, Christmas is what you make of it. I love Christmas. You see me sitting on Santa's lap in that picture on that post today? Yeah, I like the festive holidays. I like the spirit. It's what you make of it. Now, did it start as a pagan holiday? Listen. The Roman papacy needed to bring in the greater multitudes of the Europeans. So this is why so many mythological elements were entered into the New Testament. These different miracles, they attached to different gods that were venerated. This is how they brought the pagans in. This is what they called the pagans, the ordinary village folk of Europe. And, old Saint Nick, old Santa Claus and all that, everything starts from a germ of truth. There probably was a guy Saint Nick in Europe who was given maybe he was a chimney sweep, maybe he was giving presents to kids. He got caught, and the story went on. Maybe it's all true, but December 25th was the birth of Mithras in the ancient world. December 25th was venerated in the Orphic mysteries. December 25th was actually the birth of about 30 different gods, even Dionysius of the ancient world. So December 25th is found over and over. They're writing the research, the amazing research of Archaix, Kersey Graves, many others that I can't name off the top of my head. I haven't read those books in years, but they show that the claim that Jesus was born on December 25th is actually trying to link him with all these ancient crucified gods of the old world. If you think Jesus was the first worshipped individual who was crucified, you're totally wrong. Yeah. Matter of fact, Kersey Graves has a fantastic book called The 16 Crucified Saviors of the Ancient World, or 16 Crucified Saviors Before Christ, something like that. Archaix's book, The Greatest Story Ever Sold. Yeah, these books will educate you. So will the first 200 years of the Christian religion, written 100 years ago by a scholar named Charles Waite. Yeah, these books are phenomenal. They'll educate you on where all these attachments came that did not belong to original Christianity. The original story of Jesus did not have any of these attachments. The best data we have is that Marcion was a student of the Gnosis. Marcion had a copy of the sayings of Jesus. Now, the sayings of Jesus, there's no miracles. There's nothing supernatural. There's no virgin birth. There's none of that. It's just the things that Jesus taught in his parables and his prophecies, and they were phenomenal. And this is what he had. It was the original gospel. It was before Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Now, the sayings of Jesus, he also had 13 epistles of Paul. For those of you who don't know, you have to go to my Dark Scriptures playlist to see the sources on all this. But the Apostle Paul doesn't seem to know who Jesus was. You can go through all the epistles of Paul and you will find out that not one miracle Jesus ever did is mentioned by Paul. Paul never quotes Jesus. There's nothing that Jesus ever said that Paul quotes. To Paul, in the New Testament, Christ was a concept. Now, there are some interpolations where it says Christ and him crucified. Well, this is also allusion to the ancient Christ of the Orphic faith, pre-Christian, where the Dionysius and all these prior Greek gods were actually crucified. So, the original Christian tenets were the Gnosis. This is why the Cathars and Waldensians, the Albigensians, this is why the Roman papacy went to war with these people. Because the original Christianity was Gnostic. It became carnalized through the agents of Rome. They carnalized it and basically turned it into the Mithraism that was so popular through the Roman Empire. Because the Roman soldiers, the legions, they were all on board with Mithra. Mithra was born on December 25th. Mithra was a crucified savior. Many things that Mithra did are all mirrored in the new Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John version of the sayings of Jesus. So, it's the Gnostic version was not carnalized. When they carnalized Christ, they had basically taken the version of Jesus from the Gnosis and turned it into something that was material. And I disagree with it. I disagree 100%. I'm an immortal being, and I don't need God to show up in a physical form and get tortured for me and to hang on a cross and all that. That's materialism. Yeah, that's more evidence of the God of this world. Remember, the God of this world is the inventor of this predator versus prey reality that's unfolding around us every single day, where creatures require their sustenance by killing other creatures that cannot defend themselves from them. Yeah, this isn't the real creation. This is a copy, and it has all the earmarks of its violent creator. You just got to search for them. And this is what happened with Christianity. It started as pure, a spiritual teaching. Just like the 13 epistles of Paul. Christ was a concept. The sayings of Jesus. Jesus' teachings were important. He was the Word. Then they turned around and turned him into a real person, and a real person who went through all these things, did all these miracles, and they pulled in the pagans, and this was all developed over a 300-year period. But yeah, it was originally purely Gnostic. Well, I mean, I don't know. On my channel, I go into a lot of theoretical material where I believe that we're living in the Nemesis simulation. And that is that from the very beginning, this has been all about running simulations to see and experiment with different biospheres to see what we can survive. Because I have theorized that either one, we're traveling away from a destroyed system toward a new system, and our scientific data has already given us basically what's in that new system. So we're running simulations to see where it's best for our arcs to land. So I've also theorized that the Nemesis simulation the Nemesis cataclysm has not begun, and that all of this is a projection, simulations that are done to see what our best choices are when this event occurs. And this is why all these calendars are attached to different arrivals, like the capture flood, the appearance of the moon, 4309 BC, the first time the doom shape appears, Phoenix appears, starts like a 270-year period of darkness. All these calendars started because of the Nemesis cataclysm. 5239 BC, 3439 BC, the first appearance of Enki. The Anuna, they appeared. That's the Nemesis X object. It's the very first time in recorded history it appeared. And it just happens to be when civilization just exploded, when the Anuna appeared in the ancient Near East. So I have theorized that I've also theorized that the Nemesis cataclysm and these projections and all is absolutely untrue. Every bit of it is fiction, and all of this is an actual program that we're living in because we're actually on the outside of the construct, and while we're traveling, we need things to do, and we volunteer for these little programs, and that we know on the outside there's absolutely no threat to us on the inside. But once we're on the inside, we are subjected to the holography, which is very convincing, and the memory wipe completely disassociates us from that mindset we had on the outside that we were protected. So in here we learn to fear, and in here we actually think that our life is threatened when it's not. Yeah, it's like a very advanced video game. Whatever happens in here, we think it's of consequence, but it's really not. As soon as you die, you're going into another life sim. You're being born into the whole deal. You experience everything again. You may remember some items until you're 6, 7, 8, 9 years old in your new avatar. The memory's wiped. You live a whole new life. You accrue new experiences. You go through all this, and we do this hundreds, maybe thousands of times until the program is rebooted. Once the program is rebooted, we make our exit, and then on the outside of the construct, we're all amazed all over again that, wow, that was fun, and it only lasted 18, 19 minutes because it's a time dilation. So these are all theoretical, but like I said before, they're educated guesses based off all this data that I've had to collate and put together, trying to make sense of the reality that we're in. So we have scenarios that are available, and there's evidence for all of them. Which ones are true, I don't know. This again requires objectivity that we cannot experience. We are in a subjective reality. What I mean, Holly, is you're asking me what question I would ask a creator. But if I wasn't here anymore, and if I was separated from this false avatar in this false reality, and I was returned back to where we're really from, and I had an audience with the Oversoul, would I have any questions? That's my problem. I think that the subjectivity that we are suffering only concerns this experience. Once you remove my personality from this artificial construct, I don't think I'm going to have any questions. I'm probably only going to have praise. Like, wow, man, you have created such a fantastic reality. I went through this, man. I really believed this happened to me, man. I burned at the stake. Man, they called me a witch. I was a female for 23 years of my life. They did this to me, and then I died on a Roman battlefield. I was a shrimper in ancient Babylon, man. I lived till I was 102 years old. I actually saw Queen Semiramis one time fall down the steps. I laughed and they whipped me. You know what I mean? I might have 1,000 experiences, and I remember every bit of this. And then I can go look on a huge holographic display, and I can look up different people that I know entered that simulacrum with me, and it tells me who made it out. It's like graduation, and I realize, wow, man, you made it out with me, man. And we find out that other friends and family are still in because they got rebooted in it. So they're not going to have an opportunity to make an exit for another 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, or an hour. I don't believe there will be any questions that on the outside of the construct I will ever need to ask, because I believe in the eternal reality of an oversoul, and that means all things have already been prepared for. And for me to even have a question of a perfect being implies an imperfect creation, and I don't believe that. Well, there's not a lot that can be offered. I do discuss it quite a bit in several videos. My Nunophiles videos, I go into some detail about it, but there's a lot of speculation that they're reptilian. I don't know that. I've never seen one. Don't met them, but I have never met them. But I do know that if they are, I have only found 2 references in all my research in ancient records that infers that this other race occupying our world are reptilian. That 2 references isn't enough, especially one from the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Lamech Scroll, or the Genesis Apocryphon. One of those scrolls in the Dead Sea refers to the reptilian race of demons. And then the other one is a Akkadian cuneiform, which Zechariah Sitchin actually cites other researchers. So it's not him, but it's in his Earth Chronicles books, where it talks about the reptiles, and it's a cuneiform tablet that talks about the race of reptiles that are here. I don't know. Those 2 references aren't enough for me to say that race is reptilian. I don't know. But I do believe that in former times they were very humanoid. And for whatever reasons, they're not able to come up to the surface. Maybe the sun does something to them. I believe that was the case in the Edenic story, when the gods had to try to use control mechanisms to control Adam and Eve, the first people. And what I mean is they had to threaten them that they would surely die if they ate of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Well, this is a control mechanism. This isn't what you think it is. This isn't a subterranean race coming up and using force to enslave humans. This was using information to trick humans into doing what they wanted them to do. And the humans rebelled. And when the humans rebelled, they instantly realized that they were naked and that they had been deceived. So the serpent actually told the truth. You weren't going to die. Your eyes would be opened. And it's exactly what happened. Their eyes were open. The scales fell off their eyes, and they realized, damn, we've been kept butt-ass naked like animals. Yeah. The religionist interpretation of what happened in the Edenic story is the exact opposite of what really happened. And I have a video that goes into details about that, line by line. I read line by line of the Genesis text and give you a totally different interpretation of events. When the Great Pyramid was built, it was never fitted with a cornerstone. And the ideas attached to the building of the Great Pyramid. Remember, every tradition that we have that concerns the Great Pyramid is in retrospect, because we don't have any original documents for that time. All the evidence shows that writing didn't even exist when the pyramids were built, because if there was, we'd have, just like, and this is a really good point. Listen, Muslim scholars 800 and 900 years ago were publishing books about the Great Pyramid. And one thing that stood out in that period of time was that Muslim scholars had concluded that the Great Pyramids must have been written before the advent of writing. Because had writing existed when those pyramids were built, then somewhere, someone on earth would have recorded something about it, but they didn't. There's nothing. So that was really, Muslim scholars did that. I cite those records in Lost Scriptures of Giza, my book on the Great Pyramid. But I don't know, the pyramid is very interesting because it's not just an architectural project. Every bit of it was attached to eschatological beliefs, actual projections, beliefs, prophecies of the unfolding of human events in the future. And it was specifically designed in all the traditions, like the ancient Coptic traditions of Surid. It was specifically built to preserve knowledge, not just through a cataclysm, but to survive the Great Flood and maintain structural integrity all the way to the last days. That's really interesting. That's very interesting that this monument was designed to survive all the way to the last days. It's very interesting. I don't know where you are in what stage you are in your life. I know that if you're a part of the collective and if you believe all the mainstream narratives, if you're a hardcore religionist, and when I say a hardcore religionist, I know there's a lot of fundamentalist Christians that believe they're going to heaven and they're all this. But you know what my experience is coming out of Christianity, Southern Baptist Christianity, is that I have found some of the most judgmental people in the entire world that have convinced themselves that they are holy while the rest of the world is wicked and evil. And this mindset, to me, is the ones that are going to get recycled right back into the system. It's going to blow their minds that they have actually boxed themselves into believing they're believing that their religiosity is in some way spiritual when it's not. If you're a true spiritual individual, then you understand that the value of life is our interactions with other people who are living, what we do for them, how we interact, the actual act of discovering things is almost more valuable than the discovery of things themselves. How we treat our fellow man, the core fundamentals of being human are the main things that that we're judged by. I mean, these things bring out certain qualities in the human family that are very noticeable, and it's imagination, empathy, intuition. These things are our spiritual guides that allow us to navigate through this creation and recognize who we are in the context of our environment. And when we do that, and when we self-identify, we actually actualize who we are. And that we turn into a beacon, and other people recognize it. And then we befriend other errants, other people who realize that, damn, I'm very different than the collective. I don't think like those people. I'm not like those people. I actually get offended by many of the things that they believe and hold true. And you're an outsider looking in. You're the minority. So these are the people that are going to be making their exodus. They're going to leave the construct because the construct doesn't want you here. It doesn't want you here at all. You're causing problems. It wants the people it can feed on. It can't feed on you. So when the exodus occurs, you're gone and you're rebooted, which is a good thing. You want to be gone. You're going to move on to the next layering of your reality. The next simulacrum, maybe return home for a while, be with friends and family before you join another construct. But yeah, it's a construct itself that doesn't want you here, and it's going to eject you at a certain time. But 2178 is not that time. That's the reboot. That's when everybody's recycled right back in if they're not ready. There's an event before that. I don't care if you call it a rapture. I don't care if you call it the resurrection. But in the eschatology, it's simply referred to as the Exodus. The exodus of souls. Remember, the book of Revelation calls this world Egypt. Yeah. And in Egypt, there was an exodus, but it was only those who were ready to leave. And they left. They left the world. They left Egypt. That's who you are. That's who I am. I hope you are. You know, when that time comes, it's not like there's a decision you have to make. It's not like, now the oversoul has already prepared for everything. Wars have already been won. No, and you're not this whole idea that the fall of man and that we are cursed by sin and all that, that's dungeon programming. That's religiosity. It's got nothing to do with reality. No. The very fact that you're even entertaining some of the Archaix material shows that you are not among the collective. So, yeah, it's time for you to move on. And there's going to be a time in the near future when we all move on, except for those who basically love this world, want to stay here. Those who have fallen prey to all the dialogues and all the mainstream media narratives. These are the people who have basically sacrificed their souls to the construct. They've given it to the construct. They can't break free. This is my mantra: break free or die trying. Because in dying, you're not actually going where you think you're going. You're coming right back in to be an even more better, even more powerful individual. Yeah. When you die, nothing is taken from you. It's all given to you. And your next life sim, you're just a little bit more stronger, and you live through that. And when the exodus comes, it's not a decision you have to make. You're going to automatically know, because the oversoul has already provided all that. Yeah. Worrying about what's going to happen tomorrow is the greatest way to suffer something tomorrow. So now don't do it, man. Don't even worry. I also believe that before the next real bad one happens, like you document, that's 2178. But before that, you, me, and a whole bunch of other people, we're going to make our exodus, because we're going to be making our exodus as a collective. We're leaving. And everybody staying behind are the ones going through the worst of the apocalypse. And the worst of the apocalypse, the grand finale, is that plasma apocalypse that you document so much. It is the year 2178. It is 138 years after 2040, the Phoenix phenomenon. So yeah, it all fits. All of our research fits together, man. It's not even a mystery to me. It's why I don't hardly ever talk about it. It's so obvious. But it's nothing you got to worry about, because we're going to be gone before then, exiting this construct, and we're going to go to a whole different one. And maybe in that new simulacrum, after your 418th life sim in that new one, you might start a whole nother YouTube channel and in a whole nother alternate reality, and be talking to a whole bunch of people just like us all about, hey man, back when I was in that simulacrum, there was this thing called a plasma apocalypse. Hey man, reality is far more interesting and complex than we give it credit for. Problem is, we are subjected to this one single time. This time dilation we're suffering right now keeps us from seeing the whole. We only see pieces of the whole, fragments of it in our research. If we could see the whole, it would be an absolutely beautiful thing. I believe there are multitudes of simulacrums, and I believe that the creation is an ongoing thing, and that the creator never did a single creation, because that's not what an eternal being would do. An eternal being would have an eternal creation. That means the creation never stops, and there's always a need for more and more beings to help steward more and more creations.